Hello, for those who are watching this recording of a talk I gave previously on the 21st of April, 2023 to the Boston branch. Unfortunately, I got sick immediately afterward, and so it has taken me a week to be able to now record this talk for those of you who are unable to be there. The Blackboard drawings and charts that I used in the unrecorded live presentation are presented here as PowerPoint images. In keeping with anthroposophical threefolding, I've split this lecture into three sections that you see here. One, broad view of evolution. Two, the situation today. And three, the rest of this fifth epoch out of 7 epochs. Today, humanity is working upon the consciousness soul. The real battle of our times is our inner battle. Out of the inner victory, that is, of overcoming selfishness, can brotherly love properly evolve. We see here the condition before the activity of Christ. That is, as we now confront Lucifer and Ahriman, Lucifer and Ahriman leave no space for Christ. But if we Christianize what we meet in the world, when one can truly say, Christ in me, then one can inwardly separate Lucifer and Ahriman, not only within oneself, but even in what technology brings to us. So you see the after Christ can be active. As on Golgotha, Christ here forms a trinity with Lucifer and Ahriman. This active trinity we must recognize in the world as well as in us. You see, we lived in Eden during the Lemurian epoch. So long as we were above and without physicality, we were not within the reach of Ahriman. But the change that Lucifer brought about to mankind had to be met with a counterbalance, and this meant bringing Ahriman into our evolution. Ahriman prepared a realm unlike any prior existence. In the spiritual realm, beings interpenetrate each other. But for us to develop freedom, we would need an existence where each experienced their own space, free of any other being. This is the physical, and into it we fell. This was meant to be temporary until we developed freedom. As we fell, at first, our physical body was composed of air, and at that time we breathed fire. Later, our bodies condensed into the watery element. Then we were like jellyfish, and we were androgynous beings. Now we are in the 5th of 7 epochs. In this 5th epoch, there was an incarnation of Lucifer some 5,000 years ago in the East. Then came the incarnation of Christ in the middle. Now we face the incarnation of Ahriman, and that will be in the West. This must happen. Must. Balance must come in the course of evolution. Just as Lucifer and Christ were allowed to prepare, so will Ahriman be allowed to prepare. It is not for us to stop Ahriman's preparations, but for us to also prepare. And in doing so, we shall evolve. Ahriman is the Lord of death. Fear feeds Ahriman. the angels said to the shepherds, "Fear not." Today, we can overcome our fears through spiritual science, especially through its view of evolution. We are now well past the midpoint in Earth evolution. Everything was once alive. Death separated out the lifeless kingdom. We are now in the second half of Earth evolution, a period where decay dominates growth, as it does in old age. Not until the middle of the Atlantean epoch did we, as humans, emerge from the watery element to stand upon what had become solid during the Atlantean epoch. Only after we stood upright did sexual procreation for humanity begin. Seth was the first so born of two. Only from the mid-Atlantis until the end of the Fifth Epoch will mankind stand upon the solid earthly element. Ahriman hopes we will seek to make heaven on earth, and not then to ascend to a new life in the etheric realm. But if we are to become strong angels for those who will be human after us, then we must proceed through all of the destined stages of evolution. In this, the Fifth Epoch, we must complete the spiritual impulses begun during the Lemurian epoch. As such, everything to do with the need for the physical, everything that required the separation of bodies in space, all this will end by the year 8000. The whole of our post-Atlantean cultural evolution finds its meaning when humanity has evolved through the physical world, where we can develop certain talents, new talents. As we evolve, the danger is that we may lose sight of how we got here, or we may cower in fear of the way forward through Ahriman. We might come to love the physical so much that we won't want to leave it behind when the time of ascension begins. Artificial intelligence asks us to ponder, what does it mean to be a human being? As reincarnating beings, are we not more cosmic than earthly? A new life in the etheric realm awaits us in the Sixth Epoch. Each epoch is composed of 7 cultural ages. Ascension to this begins at the end of the 6th cultural age of the Fifth Epoch. Finally, our earthly evolution finishes with the 7th epoch, when the astral realm descends to our existence. What kind of bodily members will we have then? We will be very different beings on the human stage of that 7th epoch. To understand evolution, we need to know that there have been prior planetary conditions, or some might call them solar systems. The astrophysics field of metallicity agrees with this picture, that is, that there were 3 prior solar systems. Each of these, and their esoteric names, Saturn, Sun, and Moon, had beings who were upon its human stage. The conditions were so different on each that nothing physical offers a similarity. Each of these had a purpose. With the current solar system, a goal of Earth evolution is the development of morality that you see pictured here. And that plays an important role in the future solar systems of Jupiter, Venus, and Vulcan. It is a human task to bring about the interpenetration of the moral and the mechanical. Just as light and dark were brought into interpenetration, resulting in colors, so shall something new and important arise for Jupiter from this interpenetration. On Jupiter, we will be to those on Jupiter's human stage as angels are to us who are on the human stage of Earth. The chart here shows the name of those beings who were or will be the administrators of each planetary condition. And the only two names that aren't on this are the cherubim and the seraphim, who are in that first hierarchy closest to the Godhead. Beings of hindrance began as we began Old Moon. And this was the Godhead that directed some of these dynamis beings to become beings of hindrance. The Old Moon continues into our times, as does Old Sun and Old Saturn. They don't cease, they are continuing. And in a way, even what comes in the future already exists. The last diagram showed Earth evolution. This diagram shows human evolution, with a mystery on Golgotha at the turning point in time. 333 years before was the time of Aristotle and Alexander. It was effectively the close of the mysteries. Gnosticism prevailed long enough for some people to grasp what happened on Golgotha. But 333 years later, with the rise of Constantine and the coming of Roman Christianity, things like the Council of Nicaea had happened, and the turning from knowledge to faith, this path of knowledge to God, that is Gnosticism, had to fade away. So I'm going to read a couple quotes here from Rudolf Steiner. The first that people always are wondering about is this being of Ahriman, who people like to equate with Satan. And given the picture of evil, there is a, should we call it a Catholic tendency to view Ahriman in this way. Even the role of evil is considered some being who is almost equal to God and just has this free will to do as much evil as possible. So Steiner spoke about evil in these words: what is the purpose of these forces which induce in the universe when they first infiltrate mankind's being? They are certainly not present in the universe in order to provoke evil acts in human society. These forces of evil do not exist in the universe for the sole purpose of inducing man to commit criminal acts any more than the forces of death exist simply to bring death to man. Their function is to awaken in mankind, when he is called upon, to develop the consciousness soul, that is the tendency to open oneself to the life of the spirit. Mankind must assimilate these forces of evil which are operative in the universe. Assimilate these forces of evil? By so doing, he implants in his being the seed which enables him to experience consciously the life of the spirit. The purpose of these forces of evil, which are perverted by the social order, is to enable man to break through to the life of the spirit at the level of the consciousness soul, end quote. In human evolution, we are in the age where we are to develop the consciousness soul. Does this somehow relate to machines and Ahriman? It certainly does. So I'll read another quote from Steiner on technology and the consciousness soul. The question then arises, if modern technology is simply a source of death, as it must inevitably be, why did it arise? Certainly not in order to provide mankind with the spectacle of machines and industry, but for a totally different reason. It arose precisely because of the seeds of death it bore within it. For if man is surrounded by a moribund mechanical civilization, it is only by reacting against it that he can develop the consciousness soul. So long as man lived in communion with nature, that is, before the advent of the machine age, he was open to this suggestion because he was not fully conscious. He was unable to be fully self-sufficient because he had not yet experienced the forces of death. Ego consciousness and the forces of death are closely related. Well, do we understand death? I'll offer another quote from Steiner on death. Death, as it is seen and felt by mankind, is a deceptive phenomenon, an error. Thus, Christ reveals to his disciples the name of death behind which is hidden the fount of transcendent life. Never would the new life Son have come into being had not death entered the world and been overcome by Christ. Death, therefore, when contemplated in its true form, is the Father God. And Christ came into the world because a false reflection of this Father had arisen in the aspect of death. Christ came to create the true form, a true image of the living Father God. The Son is the issue of the Father, and his mission was to reveal the true form of the Father. Verily, the Father sent his Son into the world that the true nature of the Father be made manifest. Life eternal, veiled behind temporal death. I have just two more quotes for you. I hope these are helpful. It's from The Fall of the Spirits of Darkness, Lecture 4, and it is about the elemental spirits of birth and death. And here Steiner begins by remarking, the time has come for humanity to know certain truths concerning the spiritual background of the physical world. If people are not going to be prepared to accept these truths out of their own goodwill, they will be forced to learn them from the terrible events that will happen as time goes on. And in a few moments, I will elaborate on what Steiner had to mention on this. And Steiner then describes these elementals of birth and death. Anyone with more or less normal feelings, even today, will be shaken to learn the truth that in order to bring about birth and death in the physical world, the divine spirits who guide the world destinies have to use elemental spirits who actually are the enemies of everything human beings seek and desire for their welfare and well-being here in the physical world. End quote. So why? Well, their nature is with life transition, these elemental spirits of birth and death. It's not with the life you are born into. It's the transition. And so if everything was done just to suit the wishes of human beings, that is, to be comfortable in this physical world, to be fit and well as we go to sleep and wake up again and go about our work, if all spirits were of a kind to see to it that we have such a comfortable life, birth and death could not be. To bring about birth and death, the gods need entities whose minds and whole way of looking at the world give them the urge. So I'm quoting Steiner right now. Give them the urge to destroy and lay waste to everything which provides for the welfare of human beings here in the physical world. We have to get used to the idea that the world is not made as people would really like it to be, and that there exists the element which in the Egyptian mysteries was known as iron necessity. As part of this iron necessity, entities hostile to the physical world are used by the gods to bring about birth and death for human beings, end quote. So this brings us to where we stand today. We face the looming incarnation of Ahriman. We're trying to develop the consciousness soul, but this means we must also face death. We've been asked to take on the job of controlling these elemental beings who hate to see us enjoying the good life and who must transition us from the spiritual world to the physical and back again. You ask, hey, where's my freedom in this? I already have too many responsibilities. These are way beyond my pay grade. So now we come to the middle section of this talk when we try to grasp what technology is doing to us. And I'll be trying to answer those questions you just heard me say for your sake. Now, I just said what technology is doing to us, but perhaps I should say what technology is doing for us in our technological and cultural age. What is the direct and indirect effects of technology upon nature? While technology is certainly making life easier by doing all of the hard lifting and backbreaking work, it profoundly affects the world that we live in and depend upon for our physical existence. We hear foreshadowings of this in Rudolf Steiner's Lecture 4 that I was just quoting from the Fall of the Spirits of Darkness, where he discusses how we humans are meant to be in this age capable of taking up the administration of these very elemental beings. This is a task for us. It's not that we're supposed to just observe and go, oh, you're so cute, you elemental beings. No, One set of elementals we are to administer are those of birth and death. To make these transitions, the higher beings needed such elementals to ensure that we remember that we are cosmic beings. These elementals, when not doing birth and death, seek to destroy nature. They enter now into industry, commerce, and technology. We can invent great labor-saving machines, but these will only bring gradual ruin upon nature. What else will these new machines do? Will they change the workforce? Before I answer this, let's first take a look at what the workforce looked like. And we'll go back to the mid-1900s, and here we see a textile factory. Now imagine this is your 8-to-5 job. If you hated this work, your only hope was to get married. You see, they're all women. That entire factory where you can hardly see the other side. Thousands of women. Oh, now these men had similar 8-to-5 jobs. Well, sort of similar. Think of the dramatic change for the role of women in the workplace that has taken place in the past few decades. Would you say these jobs were dominated by Ahriman or Lucifer or both? Was there any space here for the Christ? There is a form of artificial intelligence that operates all telephone networks today, plus the World Wide Web, the internet. Before this built-in intelligence happened, this scene was very common. The work of these women has been replaced by electronics. Is the loss of such jobs a gift or a misfortune? As we free ourselves from being immersed in Ahrimanic work by giving it to AI and robotics, what will we do with our free time? Study spiritual science? Not so many years ago, such manufacturing lines were staffed with many hundreds of blue-collar workers. During my college years in Michigan, I spent one summer working third shift for a company called Motor Wheel. Those summer jobs and those jobs in general are gone now. The worldwide sum of the work performed by robots today amounts to many millions of human hours per week. Nearly all of the jobs of the industrial age are now done by robots. Again, ask yourself, is that a bad thing, or could it be a good thing for human evolution? We've known for a decade that self-driving cars would be here one day. Once they are, will we be safer? Will there be fewer highway fatalities with no drunks driving on the highways? No impatient speeder hitting a pedestrian or a biker in an intersection? But what about the future for hackers? Might this become the way of assassination in the future? So you've all heard about ChatGPT, a general large language model of artificial intelligence. Now, this works amazing by treating everything as a language that we just have to translate. And so improvements to one field helps all others. Where are we going now? There are many benefits, such as more profitability, higher production, better quality, and there are known issues. But it is the unforeseen issues that are our true concern. Why is this happening now? because it forces us to ask the question, what is it to be human? When we search for what it is to be human, we must come to spiritual science, freedom, the philosophy of freedom, morality. What is thinking? A brain function or spiritual activity? From the conclusion of chapter 10 of Philosophy of Freedom, quoting, human morality, like human knowledge, is conditioned by human nature. And just as beings of a different order will understand knowledge to mean something very different from what it means to us, so will other beings have a different morality from ours. Wow. You mean the 10 Commandments doesn't apply to all beings? Morality is, for the monist, a specifically human quality, and spiritual freedom, the human way of being moral, end quote. Job changes. 90% not needed. Relationship to work. Work is pay. One needs a salary. But with all this, goods will be very inexpensive. What about housing and healthcare and all these other things? Will there be universal basic income? Freedom from Ahriman's work. Autonomy for Ahrimanic beings to manage the future. Divert much of what we need to what they need, or so it seems. What will we do with all our freed up time? Now the third section, when we face what is to happen in the rest of this, the fifth epoch of 7. I show you this timeline, and I sure hope it doesn't cause fear, but to show what it is that we, especially here in the West, need to prepare. Each of us need to prepare. This shows future events according to Steiner. And so this is the evolutionary picture that we need to get to learn so that we can, out of our freedom, properly prepare the future when our earthly experiences will change. In red, we see the start and end dates for the coming 6th and 7th post-Atlantean cultural ages. In green, the start of the 6th epoch, when we will no longer have a physical existence. Think about that. I've tried to indicate approximately where some future events will occur. The appearance of Christ in the etheric is showing us the way. It will last until about the year 5000. Soon thereafter, sexual procreation will have come to an end. This will be the time when the Maitreya Buddha will appear and touch the remains of Kashyapa with his right hand, causing this corpse to be transported in fire. This is the same fire made manifest to Paul on the road to Damascus. This fire will rescue for future times all that was great and noble in this, the 5th epoch. In the spiritualized fire in which Christ appeared to Paul, the body of Kashyapa, untouched by corruption, will be saved through the Maitreya Buddha. Now, this is a picture of how our ascension is going to take place. The Maitreya Buddha will open the door, and it's all symbolized by this raising of the physical body, or the phantom body, I should say, the uncorrupted part of Kashyapa. For the seventh post-Atlantean cultural age, for the benefit of those not yet able to ascend, some kind of life on earth will continue with the help of the fallen angels of darkness and the gods of technology, namely the Vulcan beings. Vulcan beings and angels of darkness. We will be working with them in the seventh or American Paka. Near the end of the seventh post-Atlantean cultural age, there will arise a brood of spidery beings that will cover the earth. These will arise out of the dead thoughts we form today and in this near future. They arise as the moon begins to come closer to the earth, and that return of the moon will happen gradually starting around the year 6000, according to Steiner. He doesn't indicate how that change will occur, but that the moon is inching away now until around the year 6000. Now, these spidery beings will be the long sought bodies desired by our Ahrimanic doubles. And just before the moon returns, the great war of all against all will be waged. The physical realm will henceforth be of the domain of Ahriman. The lowest member of the human constitution will thereafter be the etheric body. So about a third of humanity will ascend when it's first able. Another third will ascend during this seventh post-Atlantean cultural age. And the last third will have to go with these Ahrimanic beings into what's called the second fall. But because they go with them, the door will be opened for this redemption in the future Jupiter. This is not a picture showing how the comforts of the good life will prevail. It does not show, at least in this cutout timeline, a future point where afterward all beings live in love and harmony. That will come, but much farther out in the future. This does not mean that we should not practice now those goals that we hope to attain. In our time, it is incumbent upon us to become aware of the many beings present in our modern environment and to deal with them. Now, I just mentioned our Ahrimanic double who joins us just before birth, and then they leave just before death. These are one of many new beings, new for us, of course, in our environment. The Ahrimanic double, though, has been with us since the time of the fall, but they were in a stage of preparation of the physical body for us, which we then took on in the middle of the Atlantean epoch. And into our physical body, they have woven electricity and magnetism, which our physical sensory system uses. I should also say that early in Earth evolution, in fact, when they were brought in to balance Lucifer, their request was for bodies with which they could conquer the earth. But they didn't have bodies of their own because that was for us, the beings of the human stage of earth, and not for them. But you can see how they can, in this seventh post-Atlantean cultural age, gain access to our transhumanized physical bodies. Out of that realm of which Michael was himself the servant, the Christ being descended into the sphere of earth, that he may be at hand when the power of intelligence that was once the cosmic intelligence shall have passed completely over to the human individual. This word individual should be well understood. For then will come the time when the urge will be the strongest in mankind to wholly give himself to that Ahrimanic power, which in every particular and in consummate perfection has made itself the bearer of the intellectual force. But Christ will be at hand for us. Through his great sacrifice, he will live in the same sphere where Ahriman dwells. We can ask, what is that sphere? Man will have the choice between Christ and Ahriman. The world will be able in mankind's evolution to find the way of Christ. If you think it is tough now, just wait for a couple hundred years more. Ahriman is still preparing for his incarnation, and it will be as successful as he can make it. As a Facebook administrator, I have read a lot of posts and comments. Many write about a hopeful future where the struggle ends and peace and prosperity reign. One person's optimism was written like this, quote, "I still have hope that we can not only overcome all adversity, but we can bring to light all darkness," end quote. Would we lose hope if we really knew the future picture Steiner gave us? Is it hopelessness to envision a future where man and machine are welded together? Many say, yuck, I would not want to incarnate into that future. We love the earth and our good lives. Must it come to that? If it must, how do we overcome the physical? Will our welding with machines cause us to want to overcome the physical? What will motivate us to leave the physical behind? If the boundary between the living and the dead became transparent, would that help? How soon will that be? Can each of you become enthusiastic about this? To quote from Steiner from Lucifer and Ahriman, Lecture 3, GA 193, quote, "But if men are able to rouse themselves to take into their consciousness what we have been studying, if they are able to guide it, that humanity can freely confront the Ahrimanic influence, then when Ahriman appears, men will acquire precisely through Ahriman the power to realize that although the earth must enter inevitably into its decline, mankind is lifted above earthly existence through this very fact. When a man has reached a certain age in physical life, his body begins to decline. But if he is sensible, he makes no complaint, knowing that together with his soul, he is approaching a life that does not run parallel with this physical decline. There lives in mankind something that is not bound up with the already prevailing decline of the physical earth, but becomes more and more spiritual just because of this physical decline. Let us learn to say frankly, yes, the earth is in its decline and human life too, in respect of its physical manifestation. But just because it is so, let us muster the strength and enthusiasm to draw into our civilization that element which, springing from mankind itself, will live on while the earth is in decline as the immortal fruit of earth evolution. Shouldn't we deal with our current problems before we dream about our future? This is true to the extent that if we do not meet the evolutionary needs of our times, then preparing for any future will be futile. We need to address both. Let me read this quote to address this concern. Quote, deep need will have to make our search for spirituality a true one. And the Christ will appear only to those who renounce everything that spreads falsehood over earthly life. All social questions can be solved only when thought out in connection with this spiritual scientific endeavor that enables the human being to appear in truth once again as a super earthly being. The solutions to our social problems will be found to the degree in which human beings are able to feel the Christ impulse in their souls. All other solutions will lead only to destruction or chaos. That is because all other solutions are based on the conception of mankind as an earthly being. Now the words, "My kingdom is not of this world," should lead us to say to ourselves, "And my kingdom too is not of this world." To quote Rudolf Steiner, the Christ will not come in the spirit if human beings are not prepared for him. How can we be prepared? Only by sensing the discrepancy between our intellectual leanings, which make one regard oneself as an earthly being, and our spiritual knowledge that declares, "I am no earth being." With this, we come closer to understanding in Christos Morimor. Thank you all, and I wish all of you to become active preparers of the future that I've just laid out, but I haven't laid it out. I'm only repeating what Rudolf Steiner has laid out from his search. For me, this is very much thy will be done. Thank you all, and good night.